All right, let's look at then the distances. So if we go 0 notes up, that's going to be, once again, flame. That's the same. Let's go through this faster and just note the difference. So if we go 3 notes up, that's going to be, once again, the minor third. That would be the same, and that's going to be lime color. 7 notes up, that's that solid distance of the perfect fifth, which is going to be azure. If we go 10 up, all of the minors are going to have that 10 distance, which is fuchsia, 10 note away, minor 7, 10 note away from the Dorian, 6 modal half step. And then we have the same for the 2, which is the 2 note away major second, and that's chartreuse. Once again, same for the aqua. We have the same distance, 5 note away perfect fourth. And then we have then a 9 note away versus the 8 last time. This is where the distance is at. So we have a 9 note away major 6, which is going to be orchid, or 9 note away major 13, note away from the Dorian, 12th modal half step. These are going to be the notes from the perspective of the D Dorian. Notice the Dorian fits entirely in the minor section. So that means it's going to be consumed entirely by the Aeolian when we combine them, except that last one will pop out because the Aeolian needed an extension for that last one. Okay, and then we go to the next one, and we say Phrygian. So we have an F minor. So I'd rather call it a 3-note Phrygian, noting that the Phrygian is sky blue. So I'd rather call it a 3rd shade of sky blue chord from a color standpoint. You could call it a Phrygian F2 chord, but the F is redundant. If you know the collection of notes, I'd rather just call it a Phrygian 2 modal whole step chord, or if it's the tonic, a capital Phrygian 2 modal whole step chord. Remembering, I'd rather name the collection of notes as from the perspective of the major. It's in the C major collection of notes, but the tonic is going to be indicated by the Phrygian if I capitalize it here, or you could just say that we're in the F Phrygian chord, but it's a little bit harder, but I don't think that's where we went over that. So I could say that's going to be a 3, 5, 7 modal range chord, which is going to be a spring, a sky blue, magenta, yellow modal range chord. So then the next one is an F minor 7. I'd rather call it a 4-note Phrygian, 4-note Phrygian chord, or a 4th shade of sky blue chord, or a Phrygian F3 chord, but the F is redundant, so I'd rather call it an F3 modal whole step chord. 3 times 2 is 6 modal half steps, 7 scale degree, which would give us the 2 Nashville number system, which is the Dorian, which would be sky blue, spring green chord. Next is an F minor extension, flat 9, because that's where the difference is. It's going to mess up all the rest of them. And I'd rather call it a 5-note Phrygian chord, or a 5th shade of spring green, 5th shade of sky blue chord, or a Phrygian F 4th modal whole step chord, but the F is redundant, so just a Phrygian 4 modal whole step. 4 times 2 is 8 modal half steps, 9 scale degree, Nashville number system 4, which is a Lydian sky blue to blue modal range chord. So then the next one is going to be an F minor 11, flat 9. So that flat 9 is going to follow through, make an extension, messing up the rest of them, which I'd rather call a 6-note Phrygian chord, or the 6th shade of sky blue chord, a Phrygian F5 modal whole step chord. F is redundant. Phrygian 5 modal whole step chord. 5 times 2 is 10. And then 10 plus 1 is 11 for the scale degree. 6 Nashville number system. A, you can call it then a sky blue to red modal range chord. Then you have the Phrygian, the F minor flat 13 flat 9 chord, 2 extensions. I'd rather just call it a 7-note Phrygian chord, or a 7th shade of sky blue chord, which would be a Phrygian F 6 modal whole step chord. F's redundant. Phrygian 6 modal whole steps. 6 times 2 is 12 modal whole steps. 13th scale degree. Nashville number system 1 node Ionian range, sky blue, yellow green range. Let's look at the distances, trying to focus on just the differences here. So we have the same intervals for the what do we call this, flame color And then the same interval for the minor third, which is lime. We've got the 7 is still azure. We got the 10 note away minor 7 is still going to be fuchsia. We've got now, however, the 1 note distance. This is where this one is different than both the Aeolian and the Dorian. This, right. So that's going to be then. This one is going to be then 1 note away, which is going to be amber. 1 note away minor second or minor 9 is going to be amber. 1 note away from the Phrygian 8 modal half steps is going to be amber. Then we have the same distance here, which was aqua, and then the same distance for the 8, and H8 is grape. All right, this is going to be then our colors by notes, and then here's going to be where it fits in our chart. These two will be consumed by the other main minor, Aeolian minor scale, and these are the extensions that will pop up if I combine these charts together. Finally, we have Locrian. So it's kind of like the minor, but then it has the flat 5. So we call that a 3-note chord would be a B diminished, but I'd rather not have the B there, even though the diminished would pretty much tell me usually that that's the Locrian node, but I'd rather just call it a 3-note Locrian, or the 3rd shade of yellow chord, or a Locrian B2 chord, but the B is redundant. I'd rather just call it a Locrian 2 modal whole step chord. And if it was the tonic, which it usually isn't, you can capitalize the Locrian. So it would be a capital Locrian 2 modal whole step chord. 2 times 2 is 4 modal half steps, which would be the 5th scale degree, landing on Nashville number system 4, which is Lydian yellow to blue modal range chord. Next, we have a B half diminished 7. All the rest will just simply be half diminished, similar to what we saw with the Mixolydian having its own category. I'd rather call it a 4-note Locrian chord, or the 4th shade of yellow chord. It would be a Locrian B3, but the B is redundant if we know the collection of notes. Just a Locrian 3 modal whole step chord. 3 times 2 is 6. 7th scale degree, therefore. 6 is the Nashville number. That would be an A or Aeolian, and so that would be a yellow-red modal range chord. Then we have a B half diminished 9, which I'd rather call a 5-note Locrian chord, or the 5th shade of yellow chord, which could be called a Locrian B4, but the B is redundant. I'd rather just call it a Locrian 4th modal whole step chord. 4 times 2 is 8. 9th scale degree gives us 1 Nashville number system, which is the Ionian, so it could be a yellow to a yellow-green chord. Then we have a B half diminished. This should be an 11. That's a typo. 11 chord. I'd rather call it a 6-note Locrian chord, or 6th shade of yellow chord. A Locrian B5 modal whole step chord. B is redundant, just a Locrian 5 modal whole step. 5 times 2 is 10. And that would be 11 scale degrees, given Nashville number system 3, which is a Phrygian, which could be a yellow to a sky blue chord. So then we could then have finally a B half diminished 13, which I'd rather call a 7-note Locrian chord, or the 7th degree of yellow chord, which can be a Locrian B6 chord. B is redundant. I'd rather call it just a Locrian 6 modal whole step chord. 6 times 2 is 12, and plus 1 would be 13 scale degree. 5 Nashville number system, which gives us the Mixolydian, so it'd be a Locrian Mixolydian chord, or a yellow to magenta chord. Let's just look at the differences for the distances for the Locrian. We have the same distance of 0 starting out, which is the perfect first. That's going to be the flame color. Same 3, which is the minor third. That's going to be the lime color. But this time we have a 6. That's the crazy one. That's the crazy, we call it the electric sky, because you get electrocuted. So that's going to be 4 modal half steps up, or the 5th scale degree, which is going to be a 6-note away diminished, or flat 5. And then we could call it a 6-note away from the Locrian node, 4th modal half step, all electric sky color. Then we get back to the norm for the minors, a 10-note away 6 modal half step, or 7th scale degree, which is fuchsia, 10-note away minor 7, 10-note away from the Locrian node, 6 modal half step. And then we have that weird one again. We saw it before, but it's still odd because it's only there for 1 out of the 3 minors. That's why the Locrian is kind of closer to the Phrygian node than the Aeolian node, and the Dorian node is closer to the majors. So the Locrian has then, for the modal half step, ninth scale degree. It has a 1 note away, which is going to be amber, or 1 plus 12 if we take the octave. So it would be a 1 note away major 2 or major 9, which is amber, 1 note away from the Locrian node 8 modal half step, amber. And then we're back to the norm with a 5 distance, which is a 5 note away perfect fourth, which is going to be aqua. And then the norm for a minor mode, an 8 note away, which is going to be an 8 note away minor 6. 8 is grape. So 8 note away from the Locrian node 12 modal half steps. And this is going to be then the notes. And then it gets its own 2 categories or buckets that it dominates on its own, because he had to make them because it's so crazy that we had to put it in its own bucket so it doesn't mess up any of the other ones, because the intervals are all different. So if you combine those together, this chart will give you the better kind of convention. So you can see this is where the Ionians fall. This is where the Lydians compared to the Ionians. These get consumed by the Ionians. Mix a Lydian to the Ionian. This gets consumed by the Ionian. Then the Aeolian falls here, but this one gets messed up. So then the Dorian, you're not going to see any of it when we combine it except for that one. Then the Phrygian, these two are going to be consumed by the Aeolian. These extensions will then be shown. And then the Dorian has its 2 columns all to itself because it's so crazy no one else wants to be around them. So then if we go here, that's what we see, right? The majors dominate the entire column. The other 2 major modes, you have the Mixolydian is consumed here, but then it breaks out because the 7 is where it gets messed up. And then the major extension over here with the Lydian gets consumed for these 3, but the 11 extension messes it up, which is equivalent to the 4. That's the augmented 4 that messes it up. Then the minors are here. Doesn't take the entire column, though. It has an extension that needed to be popped out here. The other 2 minor modes in comparison to it then will be the Dorian, which actually does fit entirely here. But then this one is the Dorian color, which took the place of the extended Aeolian that had to move out here. And then the other minor is going to be the Phrygian, which is consumed by these 2 of the minor. But then it had to pop out because it needed an extension on the 9, which is equivalent to the 2, the minor second. And then that messed it up all the way down for the 5 note chord, the 6, and the 7 note chord.